Hey guys, in this video we're going to be covering target 4C.3. Our mastery learning objective is I can determine the average rate of change over a specific interval between 2 points given the equation. So our first example here is f of x equals 3x squared minus x minus 2. If you can do me a favor and cross off that 3, it's just a typo. So the equation that we're going to be using is just f of x is equal to x squared minus x minus 2. So get rid of that 3. That's not what you're going to do in every problem. It's just a typo. It works out better for our first example. All right, so the first part is we need to sketch this graph. So in our calculator, we need to print it out. Make sure you go to New Document. No, you don't want to save. We want to add a graph. And we want to type in our equation. So x squared minus x minus 2. Enter. Alright, so here's what our graph looks like. We have some intersection points. Kind of graph our x-intercepts going right here at a -1 as well as a +2. Right? We can also graph our y-intercept, which is down here. And what we're trying to do is to determine the average rate of change on the interval of x equaling -1 to x equaling 4. So x equaling to -1, this point, -1, we already have that point. That's this one right here. So when x is -1, my y value is 0. We have to figure out what the other x, we have the other x value, which is 4, but we have to figure out what that y value is. So what we can do is we can do a graph trace option on our calculator. We can go ahead and click menu. We can go down to where it says number 5. We want to trace it. And then we want to go to graph trace. Now you could use graph trace anytime you have x values. For example, what is the value when x equals -1? Type that in. Click enter. It gives us that 0 right here down in that corner. If I wanted to do where does x equal 0, type in 0, enter, and we get that -2, which we have graphed. But we want to figure out what the y value is when x is 4. So go ahead and type in 4, and we get y is 10. So these are the values that we're going to be using to find the average rate of change. So same as before, we take our y value and subtract it by the y's over the x values, 4, minus a -1. Remember, you're always subtracting. So when we simplify this, 10 minus 0 is 10. 4 minus 1, that ends up being plus a positive, which changes to 5. And my average rate of change is 2. Now, what we want to do is we want to be able to sketch this graph. So we have part of the parabola already, right? We have this y-intercept here, here, here. And at 4, we know it's going to be somewhere at 10. So this would be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 4, going to be somewhere over here. So that's what our parabola looks like. We want to graph our average rate of change. So this right here, let's use orange. This right here is what we need to graph. And what points was it between? Well, between x equals -1 and x equals 4. So I'm going to have my point at x equals -1 and when x equals 4. And I want to be able to draw a line that goes through those. So make sure that you connect those points, because that is what has that average rate of change of a 2. All right, let's go ahead and look at example number 2. We want to go ahead and graph this. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the document. No, we don't want to save. We want to add a graph. I'm going to type this in now. So -x squared plus x plus 2. Alright, so we got some values here. Let's practice with that graph trace option. So we're going to click menu. We're going to go to number 5, which is trace, and graph trace. So when x is 0, my y is 2. Okay, so when x is 0, my y is 2. When x is, let's see, when it's negative 2, we need to know that point. So when x is negative 2, my y value is negative 4. Alright, so negative 2 down negative 4. When x is 1, let's figure out, make sure that intercepts at 1. What about negative 1? That definitely goes through 0. Make sure that point at 2 definitely goes through 0. So our parabola is going to look something like this. Alright, where is our other value? So when x is 1, we have to figure out what that other point is. So this is going to be 1, 2. And remember that this value is only that x value, right? So remember, when it tells you x equals 1, that's only the x. You have to figure out what the y is. Alright, let's go ahead and figure out what our average rate of change is. So 2 minus a negative 4 over 1 minus a negative 2. Changes to plus a positive on the top, as well as the bottom. So 2 plus 4 is 6 over 1 plus 2, which is 3. I don't know why that came out to be a double fraction bar. And then 6 divided by 3 is 2. So again, we want to go ahead and sketch what that average rate of change is between these 2 points. So when x equals negative 2 and when x equals positive 1, right here, what our graph looks like is a straight line. Alright? Next example here. Same kind of idea. Yes, you can restart the graph. You can also just press Control G and then make sure you tab up and delete. But you can also go to New Document, Never Save, Add a Graph, and then type it in. So x squared minus x plus 1. Alright, so I'm going to go my menu, trace. So when x is 0, looks like my y value is at 1. Kind of all we got to do here. So I'm going to go ahead and figure out what these points are. So when x is equal to negative 1, my y value is at a 3. So at negative 1, that's at 3. Let's check to see what our value is when x is equal to a 2. So when x is 2, my y value is 3. So 2. So this is going to look something like that. Alright, go ahead and figure out what our average rate of change is. So 3 minus 3 over 2 minus a negative 1. This ends up being 0 over plus a positive, so this changes to 3. 0 over 3 is 0. Connecting those lines, so when x is negative 1, I'm right here and right here. And when we connect that, you see that that's a horizontal line, right? Makes sense as to why our average rate of change is 0. It's not moving. Our average rate of change is constant. All right, so that's just no context, just being able to discuss average rate of change between these points. Don't forget to sketch those lines. And then always remember the rules or the steps is menu, right? Then we go down to number 5 where it says trace. And then we select number 1, which says trace all. Or graph trace, sorry. graph trace. Then just type in whatever value for x. So just, as a reminder of how to get those steps, they are right there. All right, go ahead and work on activity 4C.3. Good luck.